Hello! I hope you all are doing well. I've been trying to figure out how to film and not get glare in my glasses, and as far as I can tell, the only way to do it is to tilt my head like this the whole time, be like, oh, hello! Anyways, I'm not gonna do that. If anybody on BookTube with glasses has any tips, let me know. It's been a struggle. Preamble aside, today I'm coming to you with a tag, specifically an accomplished woman book tag. This was originally started by Charlotte, so I'll link her down below, and I was tagged by Milena. So that's what I'm doing today. It should be a fun little short one. It's based off of this conversation between Mr. Bingley and Darcy and Elizabeth in Pride and Prejudice, where they're talking about, what makes an accomplished woman. So the prompts for this tag basically come from the list of attributes these characters are discussing for what makes an accomplished woman, and I thought it was sort of fun. So anyways, the first question is music. Favorite literary musician, can be fictional character or a real person, but appears in a fiction book. And this is the prompt that I struggled the most with, so I didn't quite follow it properly, sorry. But I'm gonna talk about The Rest Is Noise by Alex Ross. Basically, this is a nonfiction book about the history of the 20th century through Western music. It's a really interesting book, but obviously it's nonfiction, so it's not talking about fictional characters. But I think my favorite musician in this book is Arnold Schoenberg, who did a lot of really great stuff experimenting with different forms of tonality in modern music. He created the 12-tone scale. I just really find his story interesting in this book because he's a Jewish composer and was a refugee from Nazi Germany in the 1930s, and he, along with a lot of other musicians from Germany, ended up landing in LA. I think because people thought well, maybe you're not going to do your experimental German stuff over here, but at least you can write movie soundtracks or something like that. So it's just there are these really great descriptions of him sort of landing in LA, buying the house across from Shirley Temple, playing tennis with Gershwin, having Harpo Marx over for Viennese coffee, going for walks with Alma Mahler. There's this whole little German musician expat community in LA in the 1930s that I had no idea even existed. And it's just sort of absurd thinking about these sort of dark intellectual German composers on the backdrop of tiki bar 40s Hollywood, basically. So I just really enjoyed that image and thought that sort of story arc, if you will, was really interesting in this book. I highly recommend this book if you're interested in the history of the 20th century. It talks about music in the 20th century, but it's really sort of more about sort of history through the prism of music, if that makes sense. So if you're interested in either of those things, this is a great book. It is highly annotated. I don't know if you can see that, but there are lots of little underlines and stuff like that. Cool. Question 1, Arnold Schoenberg. He's a good composer also. You should look up his quartets. Okay, the next book is Singing, or a poetry recommendation. And even though I don't own a lot of poetry from her, my favorite poet is Jory Graham. This is actually not my favorite collection of poems, and also you can't see it, it's Overlord. I like her earlier work a little bit better, but she's basically a really great poet that's still alive, I believe, and she sort of writes these great, I don't know how to describe it, it's I think she takes a lot of inspiration from her environment and the environment in general, but she writes with this sort of swooping cinematic verse, I guess, where it's I feel you can basically see sort of the camera angles and the zoom in and the swoosh pan around and stuff like that. I don't know if I'm crazy, but yeah, I mean, I really truly am not good at describing poetry, but I really enjoy Jory Graham's work, and if you haven't read any of her poems, I would recommend giving that a Google. Prompt 3 is drawing a beautiful cover. And I always sort of have a problem with beautiful covers just because I normally don't buy books for their covers, although I have been doing it a little bit more recently, which is not good. It's because of BookTube. BookTube made me do it. But I did recently pick up this collection of short stories by Samantha Schweblin, which they're sort of like horror short stories, and I just love a chaotic, sort of abstract cover that turns out to be butterflies. I think that looks great. Prompt 4 is Dancing, a book with a lively plot. And for that one, I picked up In the Woods by Tana French. I feel like I talked about this incessantly this time last year because I just read it and it blew me away. And I thought I would come back to talking about it incessantly because it's a really good book and it's really well plotted. It's one of these books that I stayed up to 3 a.m. to finish reading. It's a murder mystery, so basically this girl is found murdered sort of on an ancient sacrificial stone, and everybody's like, it's a cult, and all the detectives are like, it's not a cult, it's never a cult. But anyways, it's sort of the story of these two detectives, Rob and Cassie, as they, solve this murder, but also there's sort of like a B plot where Rob is coming back to his hometown, basically, and his two friends, when they were children, mysteriously disappeared, and it was never solved where they went or if they were murdered or what. And I think the combination of those two plots really, really propelled this book forward at a very fast clip. Depending on how you like your endings, I think you could love this book or hate it. I really loved it. I know people who were absolutely furious with the way this ended. So, I don't know. You can take it or leave it, but I would take it if I were you. That's all. Number 5 is Modern Languages, so that's favorite translated fiction. I'm really not good at prioritizing translated fiction in general, but one of my favorite fiction books last year was Convenience Store Woman, which was translated from Japanese. And this is the story of a woman who's in a convenience store job and very happy there. She's, I think, in her mid-30s, but society really wants her to have more ambition, either for a family or for her career. And it sort of looks at how societal expectations affect people with different priorities or something like that. It was a really good book. It was super funny. I love a funny, weird little book. And that's exactly what this guy was. So, 5 out of 5. Loved this. Number 6 is Something in Her Air and Manner of Walking. That equates to a book with a strong atmosphere. And since we're on this Tana French train, I thought I would pick up The Likeness. The Likeness is basically about a murder that happens amongst grad students at Trinity College in Dublin. And there's, a great dark academia vibe. These guys all live together in a big house. I don't know. There's evenings spent playing chess and Bach or whatever. It's very I don't know, dark academia. I feel like you get the Trinity vibes very clearly, and just sort of like that atmosphere that people look for when they look for books like The Secret History, I guess. So, if that's your cup of tea, this is a great book. Number 7 is The Tone of Her Voice, Her Address, and Expressions. And this is a book with beautiful writing. I sort of had a hard time choosing. There's a lot of really good nature writing that I've read in the past. I really like The Lives of a Cell because Lewis Thomas is a cell biologist who wrote essays actually for Scientific Magazine, but they're really beautifully written, and he really has like an ear for poetry. So I think it's just sort of rare that you get insight into like cell level stuff or like molecular biology that also has the language to back it up. So I did really enjoy this collection of essays. And yeah, I would like to give this a reread again. I also am splitting my answer because I thought Annie Dillard would make a great choice here too. Annie Dillard does really wonderful nature writing, and again has a really great ear for poetry. So even though not a lot happens in this book, it's basically her exploring her backyard. It's just written so beautifully that it brings you along for the ride and makes you sort of feel a renewed sense of wonder about what's outside your window or whatever. So I think I could think of half a dozen nature writers that write really beautifully. I think it's one of my favorite. Like I understand when people are like, it's boring. Like, it is boring, but also it makes you feel things. Anyways, Improvement of Her Mind by Extensive Reading, your next read. So as I mentioned recently, I've been working on Authority for a while. Am I gonna finish that? But I did just do a video on my April TBR, but Shannon from That's So Poe actually had a ton of recommendations for books in translation that I could try for Linguathon. So my TBR has changed a little bit. I just downloaded Frankenstein in Baghdad by Ahmed Sadawi for the sci-fi in translation prompt for Linguathon, and I think that that's going to be a really good read. And yeah, thank you. I'm excited for that one. What are we doing? Prompt 9 is, would you be considered accomplished by Caroline Bingley's and Mr. Darcy standards? And I would say definitely not. They ask for a lot. And I mean, I think some of the things, okay, so I do play a musical instrument. I play the cello. I do read a lot, so that's important. I'm terrible with languages, like even English, not great at it. I took a year of French, don't speak any French. Took like 6 years of Japanese. Don't speak any Japanese. So yeah, that's a little sad for me. I think the air of her walking, or like manner of walking with grace, is definitely not my bag. I think cartoonish would probably be more how I move through the world if we're reading ourselves, I guess. So yes, I don't think I'm accomplished by those standards. So it's good that we no longer care about shit like that. Okay, cool. This was a really fun tag, and I thought I would tag, I didn't really think about who to tag. I'm just gonna pull some people off the top of my head. Brian, if you haven't done this one, I know you're tag king, but I think you would enjoy this. You can be an accomplished man instead of woman. That's fine. Like, no gender barriers here. Let's see, Melena already did it. Lana, if you haven't done it, I tag you. Noelle, the Roomies Digest, if you want to do this one. I know one of you likes Pride and Prejudice. Christine? Question mark? Oh, I guess I'll tag Shannon from That's So Poe as thanks for the recommendations. I don't think she actually does tags very often, but yeah, I guess that's it. So thank you so much for coming along with me. This was a fun tag. I always like talking about Schoenberg. He's one of my favorite musicians. I should read more about that sort of like LA diaspora. I think that would be really interesting. Anyways, sorry, getting distracted. Thanks for watching, and like and subscribe, and I'll see you all next week. Bye.